After my divorce in the early 90s, there was a fluorescence of breakthrough books that lifted a veil that had covered our understanding of relationships, their inner dynamics, for millennia. John Gray, along with other authors like John Bradshaw, Deborah Tannen, and Alice Miller, introduced the largest breakthrough in psychology since Freud and Jung. That was the beginning of the modern era of relationship understanding. At the turn of the century, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus was listed by USA Today as the sixth most influential book in the last quarter century. John's books are now translated in approximately 45 languages in more than 100 countries. Now, John Gray.
James, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure. What a lovely introduction. I appreciate that a lot. Uh, Today, our theme is healing our hearts after a breakup. And actually, what we see on the screen, Mars, Venus, Beyond Mars, Venus, is really wonderful relationship skills for our modern time. Actually, I wrote a book called Beyond. It was called Mars and Venus Starting Over. And I'll be resourcing that book today as I share with you how to heal a broken heart. A little bit about me for a moment. I was married to my wife, Bonnie, for 34 years. 2 years ago, she passed from cancer, and that was an ordeal. And I'd say it took these 2 years where I can think about her and hear people talk about her and not feel like a knife in my heart. And that's because I'm healing my heart. And that's what a healed heart feels like when you have a loss. Is a natural grieving time, depending upon the size of the loss, the circumstances. It will be a longer time. But my first big loss for me was before I married Bonnie. I was married to another woman for 2 years. I was a young man. I'd been a monk for 9 years, celibate. It's not like I'm naturally celibate. I was very active as a teenager, but it was back in the 60s, and the Beatles said that you can get high without taking drugs, and meditation was a way. So prayer and meditation became my life. I learned to meditate. I taught to meditation. I was the personal assistant to the Maharishi. Big part of my life, learning to find God, to find love, to find happiness within myself. But then it was time to come out into the world. My brother was bipolar, and meditation didn't help him. So I wanted to study psychology. And during that time, I got married to a woman for a couple of years, and we taught a class called Making Love Work. And there I was teaching my ideas. I'm a rather creative person. I was applying my insights for a relationship in that seminar. At that point, I didn't really understand that men and women were different. I just learned about love and empathy and good communication. And there's so much to learn just that without understanding the differences between men and women. And imagine the shock when I found out that my partner in teaching these classes together, who later became my wife for 2 years, fell in love with one of my participants. And I was destroyed. My heart was broken. It was a betrayal. I felt unworthy of love. I thought she loved me. How could she love someone in our seminar? This was like a huge shock to me, a double shock to me, because it meant that the woman I loved rejected me for another man. That was one part. That was a blow to the self-esteem, caused a lot of hurt inside. And at the same time, that was my livelihood. As a monk, I didn't need much, but now I was out in the world, and that was my job, and counselor, and teaching this class, Making Love Work. I couldn't teach that class. All I had was a broken heart, double broken heart. One is my male side. I felt like I didn't have a livelihood now to support myself. And the other side of me, I felt personally rejected. And what that did, it was such a shock to me. I couldn't sleep. I was upset. And I remember when we separated, I was devastated. I didn't know what I was going to do. I never gone through grief or a loss like that. And as I what I call processed my feelings and went deep into my feelings, what I found, I wasn't just hurt about this loss in my life and present time, but it awakened feelings from my childhood. It was hurt so painful because it brought up feelings when I was about 6 years old and lost my family. I thought I would never see them again. and I would end up with these people that I didn't know. And that was very traumatic for a young child. Normally, I'd be sleeping in my mother's bed at that time. We kind of had a family bed. And now I was with strangers. I didn't know if I'd ever get back to my mother. I was devastated, and 7 days seemed like a lifetime until the woman said to me, "You need your mother." And I burst into hysterics. Yes, I needed somebody to point out to me what I felt as a child. And what came back as I was so jolted by this loss in present time, it awakened inside of me other feelings. And I only got in touch with those feelings because I was able to process my emotions. Now, what does it mean to process emotions when you're grieving? And certainly with my loss of my wife, I did the same thing. It was just even bigger. After 34 years living with somebody, loving someone, depending on someone, sharing with someone, everything you do, suddenly you realize she's not there with you. I remember like rushing home. I travel a lot teaching the Mars Venus ideas around the world. And I'd be rushing home from the airport after she died. And I realized, why am I rushing? I'm rushing to come home and see my wife. Now she's not there. And so many things that she would do for me, you suddenly realize all the things that she did in our partnership and how much I missed her. And that's an important adjustment to make. You have to feel the loss, and then you have to let go of the pain. And that's the key of healing the heart, is how to let go of the pain. And there's two kinds of pains. There's the pain of losing someone you love very much. And then there's the kind of pain that happens in divorce. And which is my first marriage was that divorce after 2 years. It was something I didn't want as well. And so I felt it was being done to me. And so it brought up feelings of when things were done to me. And fortunately, I had learned how to heal emotions. Now, there was a big wave of understanding back in the 60s and 70s is that to heal the heart, we have to express how we feel. And so I thought expressing how you feel was the holy grail of healing your emotions, just to be able to articulate it. And it is part of it, because when you can feel an emotion, like say you're sad, some people are just sad, but they're not aware that they're feeling sad. They're just depressed. But in depression, there's anger and there's sadness and there's fear. And we're not aware of those emotions, and we're not able to label them. We just feel depressed, or we feel in pain, or we feel lonely. But actually, those are feeling states, but they're not necessarily emotions. Emotions allow us to move beyond, to go beyond. And so processing emotions when there's pain in your heart is very, very important skill to have, which I'd like to talk a little bit about today. And as I've included in all my books, it's called the feeling letter exercise. It's where you feel what your pain is, and you, without editing yourself, you express your emotions. And always when there's pain, there's 4 emotions, more emotional tones. And there can be many other kinds of emotions, but you want to get back to these basic tones of emotion: anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. Anger, sadness, fear, and guilt could also be regret. Now, anger could be outrage. Anger could be frustration, but it's still that same sort of, we give it a color, red. And then there's blue. You feel sad, you feel disappointed, you feel hurt. That's another part of you. And another part of us, when there's a loss, is we're afraid that, for example, when Bonnie died, I'm afraid that I'll feel this pain forever. I'm afraid I'll never feel better again. I'm afraid I can't live without her. She's a part of me. It's like losing a leg, losing an arm. I'll never have that again. And what is it that I'll never have again? And that's a fear. And the disappointment is no longer, it was shocking. We have all these expectations, and then they're not fulfilled. We have sadness and disappointment. And then there's that wonderful emotion, anger, which often when somebody dies, it's hard to feel angry because you love them so much. But actually, in order to release pain, there's always 4 emotions. And this was hinted at, not fully understood back in the days of Gestalt. The idea of Gestalt was to fully express, and that within every emotion is another emotion. And if you can look at something like, here's my thermos. To see my thermos, I have to look at it from here, from here, from here, from here, from here, from here. And then I'm holding my thermos, and then I can let go of it. The brain will naturally let go of pain if you're able to understand the layers of the pain, why you're feeling pain. So the feeling letter is where you write out what you're upset about. We start with whatever you're feeling and you find the emotion associated with it. And if you've gone through a divorce and you're the one who felt betrayed, then often there's anger. But let's say you're in a divorce and you're the one who just said, I don't want to be with this person anymore. I feel happy not having them in my life. You still have the same trauma of being rejected and loss, because every time you get married, this is a dream. You fall in love. You think it's forever. You think this person's always going to give you what you need, and you'll be able to give them, and you'll be able to grow in love. And when that doesn't happen, there's a loss. The dream is lost. That's just like almost losing a person. It's what we thought was true. Now, for women, they often have the challenge of getting involved again, to date again, because it's like, I thought this was the one. How can I trust myself? So one part of a wound is I can't trust myself. Men don't have the same, generally speaking, men don't have that same difficulty starting again. Men have a difficulty fully surrendering their heart again, fully falling in love, but they'll usually get involved again pretty fast. The statistics on this is about 3 years for a man, he's married, after the divorce or after a loss. Whereas for women, it can be 9 years, and more often she doesn't start dating again, and she doesn't get involved again. And you can find all kinds of reasons for that, but the bottom line of it is she doesn't trust that she can get what she needs. She can't trust herself if you go deep inside. But a lot of things I say is about going deep inside and finding the layers of emotion. Let me give you an example of that. Imagine a man is arguing with you and you say, and he's really angry. And you say, well, you're really just afraid. Well, I'm not afraid. I'm angry. But actually, unless you have fear, you'd never be angry, because no threat. Then if there's no threat, then why are you angry? Anger is a reaction to threat, to intimidate, to bolster up, and it's a sign that you don't like what's happening and it better change before you can feel good again. Or that's one of the reasons for anger. But if you're not afraid that you're not going to get what you want, you don't need to push yourself up. So always when we're angry, we're also afraid. And well, guess what? Always when we're afraid, we're also angry. See, it's a dynamic. It's just looking at the glass from another point of view. Fear is, what could happen. Well, you can't think about what could happen as a bad thing unless it's happened before. And if it happened before and it's a bad thing, there's a disappointment that what you wanted didn't happen. So there's some sadness there, a loss. But where there's disappointment and sadness, there's also cause and effect. And the way our primitive brain, which is the emotional part of the brain, looks at things, if I'm hurting, someone did this to me. And you have to look at someone did this to me in order to feel like now I know how to protect myself in the future. And anger says to the brain that you have power again, and you're recognizing the problems outside of you. So now you know what the cause of the problem is. Now you can avoid it in the future. So the brain has requirements, whether we know it or not. When there's a stress inside of us, we need to explore our emotions, and that's the most important thing. And so what you do is, whether you feel sad or you feel angry or you feel afraid, you just start writing that person a letter, this situation a letter, write them a letter. I call it a love letter because you write out your negative emotions to then get in touch with what you really want and wish and need. And then love comes up. It's in there. It just you need to hear those emotions. So the Holy Grail was not just expressing what you feel, it's hearing inside what you feel, and why it's so helpful if you share with somebody else who empathizes with you is it validates, yes, I understand you feel that way. And that validates those feelings so you see them even more, because it's literally about awareness of the layers of what's going on inside of you. There's a natural healing that will take place. But let's look at why it's so painful to lose someone, and from one perspective, the Freud perspective. Freud explained to us something very important. Not that I'm a big believer of all Freud's ideas, but it was the father of psychology. And he pointed out some very important things. And one of those important things is that when you fall in love with someone, you have something called a need integrate. And what does that mean, a need integrate? It means that we all have a need for love. Okay, this is just a human need. We need love, we need affection, we need appreciation, we need to feel trusted, we need to be able to trust others, we need to feel respected, we need to feel that someone cares about us, we need to feel that we care about someone. These are all like basic human needs for well-being and happiness. And so we have these basic needs, and when those needs aren't met, it's a stress inside, and we want to know how to heal that stress. So here you are, Freud pointed out, need integrate. So I need love, and you come along, my first wife, or my wife Bonnie, who died, and I need love, and she gives me love. So I suddenly my brain starts to get love on a regular basis from my wife. Now what's happening is my brain makes a shift, and it goes, okay, I no longer need love, I need my wife. So she becomes the need, my partner becomes the need, and I've lost touch with why I need them, which is I need love. So if I need love and I get love from you, now I need you. And so if you die or the relationship ends or you stop loving me and you leave me, the brain thinks I need you as opposed to I need love. And the brain will continue to feel this way always until it experiences that I can get love without depending on that person. And so there's a letting go of that person. The letting go process occurs if we can explore our emotions 100%. But if you just feel sad about it, you'll stay feeling sad the rest of your life. And not only do you feel sad the rest of your life, but you become addicted to grieving and to feeling sad. And this has now been proven with MRI scans, is that people who chronically feel sad, they're not able to move through and heal to where they can think about the loss and not feel pain in their heart. Now, occasionally people will say, I'm now at that point in the loss of my wife, and 2 years later, it's taken me that long to be able to feel my love for her, to be happy in my life. I now have a girlfriend. I'm very happy with her. I love her. I'm monogamous with her. I feel no need for any other women. And of course, I got pictures of my wife all over the place, and I love my wife and, and my children, my grandchildren. Occasionally, somebody writes me a letter and says, you know, what a beautiful woman was. Bonnie was so special. And it was just the 2-year anniversary 2 days ago. And I got some emails thinking of you and how wonderful Bonnie was, and tears flow out of my eyes, but no pain. That's healing. Where you can still feel the love, you can still miss the person, but it's not causing you to feel pain, hopeless, despair. That can be healed. But many people stay in hopeless despair. They're not open to love again. Often they don't give themselves even permission to be happy again, to fall in love again, to enjoy your life again. And it's the brain. You see, you have to understand things, expand the understanding of grief, is that when you're holding on to what you've integrated as a part of yourself and it's not available, then you're constantly wanting what's not available. And that causes pain, to continue wanting what's not available, because you're constantly saying to yourself, I can't have it, I can't have it, I can't have it. But yes, I can't have Bonnie in my arms. I can't hold her in my arms. I can't make love to her. But we can't celebrate together. And I can just feel sad, but I feel no pain because I know I can have that again in my life with somebody else. Not the same as Bonnie, not better than Bonnie, but actually my ability to love is better, because by the process of letting go of Bonnie, the attachment to having her now in physical form with me, the letting go helped me to open my heart to feel, once again, how much I need love. Rather than needing Bonnie, I need love. Now, part of that transition, you'll never make that transition, in my opinion, my experience of working with people, till you fully process the emotions many, many times. But if you just process one emotion, which means just feel sad and cry out and feel bad and feel, oh, I'm just so unhappy, I'm so empty, I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, that's a stuck state. And so they measured MRI scans of parents who lost a child, and they just never feel happy again. They always say, you know, I'm always in pain about when I think about them, I'm in pain. And you actually can heal that so that there's no pain, and your joy comes back in your life, and you're grateful for the time you spent together, and you love that person, and missing that person doesn't cause pain. That's the whole key of healing. And the parents who were depressed and needing to take antidepressants and couldn't sleep at night, and that's part of the grieving process while you're working through all these emotions, which is learning to let go of the attachment to that's the only source of love. And what they found in the MRI scan, big news, is the same thing happened in the brain when the child was mentioned as when you take cocaine. They were addicted to grieving. So there's a danger in too much grieving. And you have too much grieving, if you can't keep moving through it. You have to keep going through your pain and then feeling love afterwards. And so if you go through, I'm sad, then you look in your sadness, you say, okay, now let me go a little deeper. What am I afraid of? And feel the fears. And maybe they're related to something that happened in your childhood, which is what happened for me. And I was able to bring back things from the past that were also being activated, because that's another Freudian thought, which is that much of our pain in present time is an overreaction because it triggers certain unresolved feelings from the past and they come into your awareness. But it's hard for them to come into your awareness because your mind is constantly going, I need my wife, I need my partner, I need my husband, I need, they're wrong, or I made a mistake. We get caught up in that as opposed to releasing the blame by just feeling the emotions that come up because of the blame, because of the blaming ourselves or blaming the other person or holding on to. There were times I remember I was so angry, I want to turn back time. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go back and be with my wife. I want to be with her. I don't want to be here. I don't want this life. I don't even want to be here. And I felt like, what's the point of being here without my wife? And I know many couples who've been married 50 years, 30 years. For us, it was being together 40 years. They just feel like, oh, my partner's not here, I want to die. It's very natural. It's too painful. And why do I want to be here? This is gloom and doom. Well, what happens is when you're addicted to grieving, you create a loop in your brain, which makes it harder and harder to let go, unless every time you feel the pain, you go, okay, I'm feeling the pain. Let me feel the sadness. Now let me look at what I'm afraid of. And then let me look at what I might regret. Oh, so many sleepless nights where I look at all the mistakes I made through the past, how I could have been a better husband. But each time, letting myself feel the sadness and the fear and the regrets, and then the anger. Anger is just as important, and you have to look at the other side of things, and it could be, for her, it was a cancer treatment that went wrong. And I would just let myself go into anger with the cancer treatment that went wrong, finding out later it could have been done differently and so forth. You got to find something. It doesn't have to be your spouse even that you're angry about. One woman I helped, her husband died and he didn't leave her any money. He spent all the money and they were in debt. And I said, and she's grieving. She loved him so much and so forth. Because whenever you lose someone you love, it's like, even if you don't love them that much, you love them more because you lost them. That's another dynamic. As a writer, I can be writing a chapter, even a few pages. And in the old days, I'd lose it with the old computers, it would crash and I'd lose it. My reaction was, oh my God, that was the best chapter I ever wrote. Oh, how can I do that again? I can't believe it. And that's because you lose it. The heart grows fonder at distance. And when you really lose someone, then your love for them comes even more to the surface and you feel your vulnerability, because love comes from vulnerability. Love comes from feeling I need you. And when you need someone, you depend on someone and they're not there, you feel your need very strongly. But we want to break that the need integrate and open ourselves to receive love from others. To come back in touch with, all right, I'm used to getting love and support from this person. I need to willfully create situations where I'm letting love in many other places and I'm enjoying it. You have to give yourself permission to heal, to be happy again. And these people in the MRI were not happy again. They were depressed and they never got over it for years and years. They're unhappy, unhappy, unhappy. They looked at the brain scan and the same part of the brain was being triggered as if they were taking cocaine. So what happens with drama, our own internal drama, it stimulates dopamine. That's what cocaine stimulates. And the more you go over it and over it, it stimulates more and more dopamine. And the brain says, well, that makes me feel really good. So while you're feeling pain and you're crying out, it also feels a relief to get all those feelings out and express it. The problem is we only tend to express one or two of the emotions and not all of them. So we never fully complete and come back to feeling at ease and feeling love. So Another reason it blocks us from feeling love, besides exploring our emotions, is uh, this confusion in the mind. Okay, so here's how it works. I feel so much pain because I lost my wife. Now, the only reason I feel pain and I lost her is because I care about her and I love her deeply. If I didn't love her so much, it would be next. Oh, next. I'm glad to be out of that. That's good. No problem with that. It's because we love someone so much that we feel so much sadness and pain and hurt and grief. So it's a sadness and pain and grief. That's a sign I love my partner. So if suddenly I start to heal that and start to let myself receive love and support from other sources, and love makes us feel good, and I start to feel good, I go, wait a second, I can't be happy. If I'm happy, that means I didn't love my spouse. That means I didn't love my child. That means I didn't love them. Because the brain goes, I'm in pain, I miss them, my heart is broken because I lost this person. The only reason my heart is broken is because I love them so much. So if I heal my heart and actually can love more and be happier than before, which is the possibility, if you heal your heart, you can be happier than ever before. That's a possibility. It doesn't happen right away. But you heal this part of you. You know, when I was a little boy, I fell out of a tree head first, 2-story tree, and my arms hit straight and kind of blocked the blow, but I hit right straight down, knocked out. The bones broke in my arms, and the bones are sticking up. Now it didn't break the skin, so the bones are sticking up like that. And I'm in shock, so I don't really feel pain at that point. Now, how you heal that broken bone is the same thing way you heal your heart. You have to reset the bone and hold it in a cast, and healing will automatically happen. But you have to reset. And reset is the process of getting in touch with your feelings. And sometimes the hardest feeling is anger. If you feel that you're really missing your partner, you have to give yourself permission to be angry at something, because that's part of the catharsis of looking at all 4 emotions. And you don't necessarily have to be angry with your partner, but if you can, that's good, because you're going to let it go. You're going to find forgiveness, because ultimately it's forgiveness which allows you to reset your bone, particularly if there's resentment, or if you're feeling so much sadness because the really wonderful person, you miss them so much. Resetting your bone is to be happy again. You got to be happy again. You got to hold that in there until you grow neuroconnectors in the brain. Now, generally speaking, once you have a loop in the brain, it takes 6 months to actually grow a new channel in the brain to change this habit, this loop. But if the loop has to do with danger, it will take longer, because cocaine, whenever you have danger, like, oh, no, my life is horrible, I'll be in pain forever, that's huge amounts of dopamine. That's what cocaine does, produces huge amounts of dopamine. Now, that's addiction. So the brain gets addicted to grieving and feeling bad, and it's very hard to break out of that. So you have to go in waves of it. You have to go into it and then break out of it. Go into it and break out of it. Each time you get better at learning how to let go and break out of it. So you don't get addicted in that way. And you don't know how long it's going to take. It has to do with the better you are at this, the shorter it takes. But the more attached to that person you are, it also takes longer. And some people just avoid the whole process completely, and they'll never experience intimacy again. They'll never let themselves go into that place again. They just go, okay, I have friends who say, oh, I don't want pictures of them. I don't want to be reminded of them. As opposed to the best thing while you're grieving is to see the videos, to see the pictures, to tell the stories again and again and again. And each time to get in touch with the pain. And then one way of processing it is hang out with some of your partner's friends and have them say wonderful things about that person. Having other people share a little bit about their journey, just a little bit, not too much. So you feel validated, and you feel also people aren't trying to talk you out of your feelings. You're not embarrassed to have these feelings. People say, oh, when are you going to get over it? I don't want to hear that again. You should move on. No, you should take your time, but you should also move on. And how do you move on? Taking your time. Processing emotions is so powerful. A good therapist can help you with this. A group can help you with this. If you're in a group and other people are sharing their losses, you're relating to those losses. And when you feel your feelings outside of yourself, that gives you greater awareness of the layers of feeling inside. And then it's all awareness, going deep inside, coming back to feeling I need love, and then getting love. So I need love, and getting that love is where the healing happens. But you got to get back to really fully feeling that need for love and releasing negative emotions: sadness, fear, regrets, and anger. These are the 4 basic emotions. Some people need a little bit more of one than the other. And generally, the one you need to explore the most is the one you don't think you have. That's the way that works. It's always, you have to go a little deeper to find what's really inside. Once you get through all 4 emotions, and you always ask yourself, what is it that I wish? What is it that I want? And you go into all your wishes and wants. And then that brings up more feelings that you didn't get that. But always when you start to freely express, I wish this, I wish I'd done that, I love you so much, I want to be with you, I forgive you for your mistakes. Forgiveness is a key thing there as well. You will find this love comes up, this gratitude. You just feel so much love and so much gratitude. It's always behind negative emotions. You see, actually, all negative emotions is just blocked love. You see, I love you, but I'm mad at you. Well, the only reason I'm mad is because I got all this love, but I'm not willing to give it. I'm not willing to feel it. Or I'm sad, as opposed to going, well, I had you for all this time. I'm grateful. Now I can move on and have more. We think in our mind that we're betraying our partner. So, if we believe in a heaven and a spiritual world, your partner's over there rooting, don't cry all the time. Go be happy. I want you to celebrate. You have a life ahead of you, and I want you to be happy. And I want you to feel sad and bad. That's one approach. But for me, the big challenge was just giving myself permission to be really happy and playful. I'm happy by nature. But I felt that at a certain point, I'm not allowed to be happy, because that means I don't love my spouse. And I remember going on vacation with a lot of friends. We go on vacation together, and they all love Bonnie too. And I'd been through about a year of my healing. So I was back to where I was starting to feel happier and enjoying my life more, and still having pain from time to time. And I went there and I had a celebration of her life, had everybody talk about her like a funeral, or, you do when someone dies. And we all talked, and I cried, and I told the story how she died, and everybody got to see how much I missed her and everything. Then I gave myself permission around my friends to have fun and be happy, because they would know that I also have all this grief inside too. But I wouldn't have been able to have fun, because imagine I just go with my friends on vacation, I'm having a great time, and they're going, he's having a great time. His wife died of cancer. How insensitive, how awful. No, professional healer at this. I'm a great therapist, and I know how to help people go through their feelings. And myself, I did it with my, first one was with my marriage with Barbara, my first big loss. Oh my gosh, that took 9 months. But when I healed it, having gone through all of this, then I was able to fall in love with Bonnie. And ironically, before I married Barbara, my first wife, I wanted to marry Bonnie, but she said I wasn't ready. And I wasn't. I needed to make some mistakes first in my first marriage to learn how to be a better man and take responsibility for challenges. Now, one of the issues that women have a lot is they don't understand how they contribute to the problem of a marriage, because they often try harder than men. Not always, but often women are, almost always in my experience. They try a lot harder to make a marriage work than guys do. He tries harder in his way by trying to earn a good living or whatever, or do what the books tell him to do sometimes. But often the books mislead him. So he doesn't know what he did wrong. But women really try hard, and then they feel like, oh, I don't know what I did to ruin this relationship. So I'm powerless to be in a right relationship. See, if you don't know how you contributed to a problem, then that problem can come at you again and again. So you don't have trust in yourself. So part of understanding how to end a relationship, a divorce, is to recognize our relationship that goes south, is to recognize how you contributed to the problem. Because only by recognizing how you contribute to the problem can you trust that you can create a new relationship and not have those problems. Certainly the other person's part of the problem, but you're just as much a part of the problem. If you think you're not, you're an exception to the thousands of women and couples I've counseled, and the millions of couples and people in my seminars that I've counseled. You're the exception to that, which maybe exists. I've just never met a person who wasn't almost equally responsible for every problem. And I'm just being generous there by saying almost equally, because there's a place where bad relationship skills on both sides will lead one partner to having an addiction. And at that point, once the addiction is there, then the addiction, you got a third party in the relationship who makes it even worse. But leading up to that is both people are equally responsible. They just don't see it. And that's where the Mars Venus ideas are so important, to recognize how we constantly misinterpret our partner's behaviors and think, oh, he doesn't love me, when it has nothing to do with whether he loves you. The idea of men going to their cave, for example, now is part of our whole world now, is that men cope with stress often by detaching, going to their cave, pulling away and doing their own thing for a while. That actually rebuilds their testosterone, and men need 10 to 30 times more testosterone to feel well-being, whereas women need 10 times more estrogen to feel well-being and 20 times more estrogen to feel falling in love. And that estrogen level peaks, she can fall in love, but what allows estrogen to get produced is feeling you can depend on someone and you need them. And so when your partner dies or there's a divorce, you feel like, I can't trust someone, I can't depend on them, I don't know how I contributed to it, or I still need them and they're gone. You can't have what you need, inhibits estrogen levels, so now you can't fall in love. So that's a hard thing for women. So the way out of that is to start dating, even though you're not falling in love, and start practicing new skills to actually get the needs fulfilled. Fulfill your needs by asking for help. And you have to fill that love tank again before you're fully healed. You have to give yourself permission to start enjoying your life again. And then you go back to your grief. But when you're in your grief, you never want to stay too long in any one emotion. You go through them back to what it is you want and wish and so forth, back to your forgiveness of your partner, your forgiveness of yourself, your understanding, you're feeling how you're sorry, you're accountable for how you contribute to the problem. And you come back to, I love you, I forgive you, I understand. That's a place you want to come back to. Now, having come back to that place, that's 1/3 of the healing. The next step is, in your imagination, you write a letter from that person to you as if they heard your feelings and they apologize to you and they validate your feelings and they make promises to you. Whatever you need to hear, if you had someone really giving you the love you need, you imagine getting it. And then once you do that, you read that letter you wrote to yourself, you read it as if that person's saying these things to you. Then you imagine, okay, now if that really happened, using your imagination, if that really happened, how would it make me feel? And you thank them. Your love makes me feel safe. Your love makes me feel I can love again. Your love makes me feel happy. Your love makes me feel I'm good enough. Your love makes me feel I deserve to be loved. Your love makes me feel like I want to get out there and live my life. You imagine getting what it is you needed and how it makes you feel. And that's one wave, that's one layer. And you have to do again and again and again. And every time you're upset, you process the emotions. And those aren't the only ways to process emotion. What I found is looking at pictures and missing her sometimes got me stuck in my pain. And then thank goodness, we have these videos of our life together. And I found videos were much less painful. And they're actually, it allows you to feel more love and appreciation and gratitude for the time you had together. Because when you see a picture, you're reminded of a moment in time, and you're not aware of what came before it and what came after it. So you're sort of stuck in time at that one moment, and that moment's not here. Whereas when you watch a video where you're with your partner or you're with your grandchildren, your kids, or whatever, you're watching the video, you're not stuck in one moment in time. Actually, there's a flow. And so during that flow, you're being able to experience a full memory of being with them, interacting with them, and you're feeling that love. Because that's what you're doing in your feeling letter as well. You're first writing out how you feel, your negative emotions. Then you imagine your partner's here and giving you the love and support that you need to hear. And then you look at how it makes you feel. And that's one wave. And it won't happen just once. It happens again and again. And each time you get better at just feeling it without pain, feeling it with more love. And, I've mentioned my wife, Bonnie, a few times here, and a little sadness came up as I'm missing her. I can talk about that. And then I just simultaneously, there's just all this love and how grateful I am to have her as part of my life, and that she has been a part of my life. And
Now, forgiveness, that comes up a lot in divorce recovery. And the question is, to the extent your actions contributed to the relationship break, then can you really forgive yourself, or must the offended forgive you?
okay, we never want to make our happiness dependent upon someone else changing. That's called being a victim. So ultimately, it's really wonderful and very easy to find forgiveness when somebody says, I am so sorry. I understand how you feel. I understand your pain. I recognize my mistake. I want to make amends. I promise not to do that again. I want to make it up to you. Any of those kinds of things makes it feel safe for you to let go of your anger. Because see, anger is a defense mechanism to keep something from happening again. So if somebody apologizes, a heartfelt apology can go miles to helping you find safety again, to let it go. But you don't want to be dependent on that. If you're dependent on that, then you're stuck feeling your pain until that person changes. And so we're going to talk a little bit about forgiveness and then how to forgive yourself. Okay. So the easiest way to find, if I want to forgive somebody, it's very, unless they do this amazing apologize, it certainly helps. The way I can more easily forgive them, and then I'm going to turn it around to forgive myself, is if I recognize how I contributed to the problem. If I recognize that I'm not a victim and that somebody else contributed to the problem. Okay, so let me give an example of that, real simple one. I drive a Bentley. It's a very expensive car. It's like a jewel. Before that, I had the best Mercedes you could buy. And I was parking at Mill Valley, where I live, and somebody came along and keyed the car and cost me over a couple $1,000s to fix. Okay, so my solution to that, by the way, is I sold my Mercedes because I realized that it was so lavish that it brought out angers in others. And I wasn't really dependent on having the best car in the world to be a happy person. And I don't want to bring out the worst in them. So I was able to forgive them to see how I brought out the worst in them. I drive my Bentley. I don't park it anywhere. I just like it. I have other cars, but I drive it on the freeway when I just want to go for a drive. It's my fun car to drive, but I don't park it anywhere. And I'm just giving you a fun example. You see, when you have more than others and you throw it in their face, you bring out the worst in others because people get jealous, people get angry, and it brings out the worst in people. I also realized that having more money than others brought out greed in others, and people would cheat me and lie to me and try to steal my money. And it happened many times. And I learned to forgive because I realized that, people think, oh, he has so much, he should give to me. And that's their mistake without a doubt. And I can be angry about that, but I have to find forgiveness and realize my part in it. And that seems rather extreme, but that's worked for me. And so what I learned is not to show off on how much I have or whatever. It's just, it brings out the worst in some people. Why do I have to do that? Having said all that, I'm taking responsibility for how I brought out the worst in someone. If I can see how I brought out the worst in someone, it's really easy to have compassion for them and forgive them. Now let's look at it from a more practical point of view, which is in relationships. If, let's say, since we hear more from women being victims, but men often say they're victims in relationships as well. But let's just look at the woman's point of view. And she says, I gave and I gave and I gave. And no matter how much I give, I never got back. I wasted 20 years of my life. And then he went off with a younger woman, and now I'm left alone. Okay, so she's bitter. And so she has a right to be bitter from everybody's point of view. How dare him? You gave him the best years of your life and he spent all the money and now he's with some younger woman, blah, blah, blah. So you have all these reasons to feel bitter and resentful. How can you forgive him for cheating on you or leaving you or abandoning you? You gave him the best part of your life. Okay, so you can feel like a victim the rest of your life. You'll never be happy. What you have to do is recognize your relationship was not as great as you thought it was, is that you were giving, but not what he needed. You think it's what he needed, but it's not. If you had actually given him what he really needed, he would have loved you more. People don't leave relationships when they're getting what they need. And yeah, you can tell me, but once you're not getting what you need and one partner goes to addiction, men today, they have got their drug addictions, they've got their video addictions. The worst one is their porn addiction. That's really tough. I feel such compassion for people today because an addiction is hard to change. It produces massive amounts of dopamine. Anything that produces dopamine overstimulates the brain, feels really, really good. that desensitizes dopamine receptors so that normal stimulation doesn't excite you. So when the man goes online to have sex, when he comes home, he can't be turned on to his wife as before. His brain has changed. I've written books about this, how, this is what addictions do. This is what high stimulation does. This is what too much sex does. This is what not enough sex does. So, a woman could simply go, gee, my partner's having sex with other women. Gee, he promised to be faithful to me. And I have to ask you, well, are you having lots of orgasms? Are you satisfying his need to fulfill you? That's a hard thing to say, but generally she can say, well, I can't have orgasms. We have no romance, no communication. I go, that's true. So that's why your estrogen levels are too low. However, how do you contribute to low estrogen? Are you dependent on a man to raise your estrogen? Not if you read my books. That's all in my book that we talked about before, which is Beyond Mars and Venus, how women can raise their estrogen without depending on a man, which allows you to forgive without an apology. So yeah, while apologies are great, we shouldn't be dependent on apologies in order to feel love again. Now, turn it around. You're the perpetrator. You feel really bad. Your partner now has been hurt by you. They've left you. You feel really guilty. I did this bad thing. How can I forgive myself? Well, when I lost my wife, every little mistake I made through the whole relationship, I reflected on. I had sleepless nights thinking, gee, if only that time I hadn't gotten angry, if only that time I'd done this for her. Your brain ruminates. The brain wants to learn its lessons, how to be a better person, and see, how did I contribute to her unhappiness in any way? Because you feel, I love her so much. I wish I could have been a better partner. And having said that, I'm not talking about I'm an awful partner. My wife said I was the best husband she could imagine. Okay. So, but ultimately, no matter how good you are, you can always be better. And so I've become a better man. I have greater wisdom, having reflected on all my mistakes that I felt bad about. When I reflected on, I could have been a better husband. And I forgave myself. And how did I forgive myself? I first had to process my feelings. And then I had to find the key when you don't forgive yourself is you don't let yourself, you're angry at yourself and you're not angry at the other person. You have to have an understanding that for every problem, there's two sides to it. And if you can imagine to forgive yourself, you first have to, process your feelings, feel your feelings, but then you go, but I can't seem to let go of my self-hatred and so forth. Well, you're hating yourself because you're denying the part of you that hates them. Now, that's a heavy thing to say, or at least mad at them or blames them, because nobody's perfect. So to forgive yourself, you have to recognize that you contributed to the problem and they also contributed to the problem. And what helped me a lot in that was my wife did journals of everything in our marriage. And she said stuff in that journal, which I didn't know, which was ways she sometimes started arguments, and sometimes she purposely gave me a hard time, and she sort of revealed, some of the things she was learning that she didn't always feel safe to tell me. So I didn't always know her side of it. There was something that happened in our marriage, and this is particular to our marriage. But at one point I said to her, honey, why is it that I'm always, this is maybe 4 years into the marriage. I said, why is it I'm always the one who says I'm sorry and you never say I'm sorry? You say you're sorry to other people all the time, but you don't say you're sorry to me. You just look at me and you don't say you're sorry. And I say I'm sorry. And she said, John, when I was growing up as a little girl, my mother was so cruel and always so mean and always blaming me for everything. And she wasn't a happy woman. And I everything was my fault. Anytime my brothers did something wrong, it was my fault. It's so painful that I'm married to you. And if I said to you, I'm sorry, and you said you should be, it would kill me. It would kill me. You mean so much to me. I have no defenses against you. That's why I don't say I'm sorry. I feel regret inside, but I'm afraid to say it. And I said to her that day, and it was such an important conversation, I said, honey, I just want you to know, we both cried. And I said, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I'm never going to expect you to say apology again. You never have to do it. I know you're doing your best, and that's good enough for me. And she never really ever said she's sorry to me. So I didn't even know what was going on inside of her. So when I read her journals, I saw the things that she was regretting, and then I could go, oh, so it wasn't all my fault. I could see her side of it. So you have to give yourself permission to understand how you contribute to problems. And if you want to forgive yourself, you have to recognize other people contribute to problems as well. And ultimately, a spiritual concept that I hold is we're all creating our own lives anyway, and life is a journey to teach us all lessons. And that's part of the grace of life, that we have our bumps in the road and we heal from them and we become better. You know, when I broke my arms and my bones broke and they reset and they had the cast on it, the resetting is the forgiveness and coming back to love. You put the cast on it, those bones will grow back stronger than before. If we can heal our hearts, we have bigger hearts as a result. We're more generous, we're more forgiving. But I remember one day I was driving my car and I was just so much grief, and I was looking at, maybe that I spent more time at work that time. I was writing the book too much, and we had an argument, and I just went really deep in myself, and suddenly I started to feel, I hate myself. I hate myself. I hate myself. You're awful, John. You're awful, John. And I never felt that in my life. So I celebrate. I said, wow, I've gotten to a deeper level here. Now I can forgive myself because I didn't even know I needed to forgive that part of me. But part of the whole thing is learning to process emotions and come back to love. That opens your heart. And you can't forgive yourself if you can't forgive others. Now, how do we actually learn to forgive others in the first place? Is if our parents are perfect, you would never learn how to forgive. Parents have to make mistakes, but you still don't know how to forgive them unless they apologize for their mistakes. All a parent has to do up to 13 years old is say, I'm so sorry I made this mistake. A child will instantly forgive. And if a child can forgive a parent's imperfections, the child then can forgive their own imperfections. But parents who can't forgive themselves often never say they're sorry, never take responsibility. They blame out. So if a parent blames out, the child just feels like everything's their fault. Instead of a parent who takes responsibility, then the child learns how to take responsibility in a loving way. Oh, I made a mistake, but it's okay. Everybody makes mistakes. My parents make mistakes. It's okay. So it's okay for me. So we have to give up that demand for perfection. I see I took most of the time on forgiveness, but forgiveness is a key thing. Thank you for asking me about it. And I just want to finish on forgiveness with a quote from Jerry Jampolsky, one of our locals here, who wrote, "Love is letting go of fear." First of all, I'll add to that title. I think love is letting go of fear. Love is letting go of anger. Love is letting go of sadness. Love is letting go of guilt. Love is letting go of negativity, not just fear. So let's just be aware of that. And so in terms of his quote, besides the book title, Love is Letting Go of Fear, his quote was, if you want to find forgiveness, you look into your past and you realize it could not have been any other way. Just take that in for a moment. It's a very deep thought. You look to your past at bad things that happened and you realize it couldn't have been any other way, based upon what that person knew, based on what you knew, based on your training, based on their circumstances. It could not have been another way. And when you look at that, you see the world is perfectly imperfect, meaning that from every one of those experiences, you gain a new awareness so that you can create a different future. And if you live in a world of guilt and shame, you go, it shouldn't have been that way. And yes, that way didn't work. It can be improved upon, but it couldn't have been different based upon the situation of what that person knew and what you knew, what circumstances were. That was the perfect things coming together for something bad to happen, if something bad happened, for you to learn a lesson. And now with that knowledge, with love, you can make sure that doesn't happen again.
John, I think you just revealed a future bestseller, your wife's Bonnie's Journal, hopefully published posthumously. So since you brought up hormones, we have a question about this. How has the blending of male and female roles in the workplace and home impacted hormone balances in both men and women?
Years later, I wrote probably my other best book, in my opinion, is Beyond Mars and Venus, because in there, it explains how we've all changed. As soon as women become more independent in their lives, which is a good thing, more freedom, more independence, this is evolution. What happens is parts of the brain become awakened, which would be more dormant in other women in more traditional roles. And that feels really good. You expanding your potential to express greater independence, greater assertiveness, increased logic. There's certain parts of the brain which are produced by testosterone and certain parts of the brain that are produced by estrogen and are fed by those hormones. Well, for men, As women become more on their what call independent side, the more independent a woman feels, the more testosterone she'll be making during the day and less estrogen. The more you feel you depend on others and need others and can get that support, estrogen gets produced. The more you feel I can do it myself, testosterone gets produced. So as women are more financially independent, there's a pressure always associated with making decisions to make money. And that pressure actually lowers their estrogen levels, keeps them from feeling the love in their hearts. The love is there. They just can't fully feel it. And the brain goes into, without estrogen, the brain goes into a bias towards looking at negativity and complaining. Why? Because complaining produces dopamine, just like too much grieving, focusing on the negative more than the positive, will become an addiction. If you complain, you're also producing dopamine. And when you produce high levels of dopamine, then your brain creates a loop and always goes to the complaint to feel good. Now, why women get into this too much complaining or looking at the negative and feeling pressure to be perfect and to do more and feel overwhelmed doing more. That's on their male side. And so they need to come back to their female side to feel balance, to feel their needs. And because they don't have the new communication skills to increase estrogen, what happens is they complain. Now, complaining will produce estrogen, which women need, okay? With not enough estrogen, their stress levels are going to go higher. So if they complain, they will get estrogen, but estrogen goes up in her. But because she's complaining, it pushes a man down, because when he gets negative messages, he feels like he's not successful. Success creates testosterone. Support, feeling supported and safe, produces estrogen, where I can depend on you. So now she complains to get the support she needs, but it's also biologically, it becomes a loop, a pleasure loop, because when you're complaining, it also produces dopamine, higher levels of dopamine than simply appreciating what you have. It literally, danger produces, negativity produces more dopamine. The brain, when it has high dopamine levels, desensitizes normal functioning of dopamine. So now you need high dopamine levels. So now the brain has learned to complain. Now, some people learned it as babies. They just cried and cried and cried. The only way they got what they needed was crying. So that's an estrogen producer, crying. So how do I feel good? I need to have estrogen, so I need to be upset about things. So that's drama. So you get addicted to being dissatisfied, addicted to looking at imperfection, addicted to complaining, addicted to being dissatisfied. And you have no chance, you have no choice. You can't go into the positive part of your brain. Even up here in the front part of the brain, one side sees negativity, one side sees positivity. We can see this in brain scans. And you start using that negative side, it gets addictive, because negativity is more addictive than positivity. So this is a loop that women get in to try to find their hormonal balance, and they feel more and more dissatisfied, which causes men to go into, no matter what I do, it's never enough to make her happy. And that's failure, and that causes low testosterone in men. When men have low testosterone, then they seek out high dopamine stimulators, which would be addictions, video games, pornography, and anger. Anger, by the way, is also not masculine. Actually, anger is feeling peaks of estrogen, high estrogen levels. And so men have to know, if they want testosterone to have healthy and vibrancy and longevity and aliveness, testosterone is the hormone. It needs to be 10 to 30 times higher than a woman. To be in love with her, when you're in her presence, it needs to go up like 30 or 40 times. Okay, and that's called making love. We have our lives. My work makes me feel really good. I'm radiating my work, but when I make love, I go to a higher level of that if my partner's enjoying it more than me. And that's why couples need good sex skills. They're not taught them. Men don't understand women. And so I've written a book called Mars, Venus in the Bedroom, teaching men the secrets of making sure a woman is fulfilled in sex. It should be about her, not about him, and how to do that. That's the challenge. It's learning new skills, because today's world, when men say, no matter what I do, it doesn't make her happy. You ask that man, and I ask him, what's sex like? Is she having orgasms? No, she's not satisfied in sex. And she doesn't mind, because many women, they're up in their head so much, they're not down south. So, but for a man, he starts out down south. He's very much aware of that need, more so than a woman, which is why another reason men will get involved right away with other women. And if a woman sees this and doesn't understand, men's sex center in his brain is actually separate from the love center. And for women, they're right next to each other. So women generally only want sex. Generally, there's exceptions due to wounding, whatever, but there's exceptions. A woman generally wants to have sex when she feels very loved and safe. For a man, he doesn't need safety to feel desire for sex. To a great extent, he just needs opportunity, and he can feel the desire for sex. And it doesn't have anything to do with love. But the key thing to have balanced brain function is to have sex with love, and it's nourishing. If men have sex without love, it's depleting. And it literally is proven to lower men's testosterone levels and create an early death. We know that men die from heart attacks only, not from cholesterol levels, not from arterial sclerosis. Men only have heart attacks when their testosterone is very low and their estrogen levels are very high. And the reason nobody talks about that, even though it's a fact, is because giving men testosterone doesn't solve the problem. It's you have to make the testosterone. And you only make testosterone when you're happy and you're fulfilled and you feel successful and you're making a difference and life has meaning and purpose for you. And that keeps your stress levels low. So you could also say heart attacks come from high stress levels. But basically, in a man, whenever stress levels are high, his testosterone is low. So a great sex life will keep a man going for a long, long time. And for women, a lot of love keeps her going for a long, long time. And she can find love in many different ways. So often women can think, oh, I don't need a sexual relationship. I've got my children, I've got my garden, I've got my different things. But for her to be a whole person, if she wants, she can include her sexuality with that and take a risk. Don't wait, date. And don't have sex unless you first feel connected in your mind and in your heart. Then it's a healthy thing for a woman to be in touch with all of her body and enjoy that part of life and the ecstasy of sharing love together in our bodies, which is something we call making love. But often for women, that's too soon. Grieving the heart is very, very important. Men will jump into sex sooner. And when I said all that, mainly my intent was to point out that often women are hurt even more when they find out their ex, if they're divorced, is suddenly dating again and having sex with some woman. She thinks, what am I, chopped meat? Why would he want that? Because she's not ready for that, because she doesn't feel, in general terms, the need for sex unless she's feeling a lot of estrogen. She's feeling, I have support and I have help in my life. And let's keep in mind that, you can be very, very happy in life. We have so many different emotional needs, and sex is just one of them. But it's one that seems to be very important for many people today.
That's a terrific explanation. And is that discussed most in your book, Mars and Venus in the Bedroom, correct?
The actual sexual skills, a woman can guide a man, the sexual skills so a woman can guide a man without telling him what to do. And so men know what to do to provide that sexual fulfillment. That's in the book Beyond Mars, and in the book Mars, Venus in the Bedroom. Starting over is a very important. That's about all this grieving stuff I talked about. It's a very complete book. And then the other one is Hormones. I talk about that, how women can create their own estrogen levels without waiting for a man to do everything right, how men can rebuild their testosterone and keep their virility in a relationship. That's in the book Beyond Mars and Venus. So these are all different distinctions of some of the message that I have. It's available for people. It's also free. If you can't afford my books, you can get them on tape. If you can't afford that, go to my website. There's literally hundreds of seminars that I teach for free. At my Facebook site, John Gray Mars Venus, I have over 100 hours of me being live talking about these things: sex, healing the heart, meditation, communication skills, hormone balance. All these things I talk about in great detail. So I hope this will serve as a good introduction, but more importantly, good support at this painful time. If you've experienced divorce and loneliness, I'm just so honored to be a part of this group, because while I said all those things, probably the most important thing is to be able to be around other people that share in your experience, because what they can express might reveal some feelings that you have inside as well. And to be able to share how you feel with others who empathize and understanding, it's that connection that allows us to heal so profoundly.
Great, John. Thank you so much for opening our minds today. I also want to mention your book, When Mars and Venus Collide. It's about successfully navigating breaks in relationships, also available on the website. We have many more questions, but I understand you're on a schedule, so we'll move on. But again, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope everyone benefited.
Thank you so much. A real pleasure and an honor.